So welcome everyone to class 58, Biblical Foundation Genesis in the Book of Beginnings. So we're back to studying and doing a review of the post-tower economy that we covered in our last class. So let's jump right in as the book of Genesis has so many riches to be revealed and to share with each other. So, Anandina, can you kindly read question 1 in English?
With mankind split into small family groups, how did they survive?
Okay, so what do you all think? Remember, the Bible is very brief and top line. It doesn't give us many details. But what do you think? All of a sudden, mankind is split into smaller family groups. How does a single family group survive in the huge wilderness of the earth?
Hunting,
Hunting, agreed. Anything else?
They lived in caves.
Yes, exactly. And so, and this is very,
fishing,
go ahead, Anandina, say it again.
fishing.
Yeah, that works. That's a kind of hunting. I agree. Uh, and so it's important for us to think of this because remember, the world believes that uh, monkeys are our ancestors, and that on the evolution from monkeys to apes to man, there were primitive types of humans, hominoids. And one group is, for instance, is the Neanderthals. And the Neanderthals lived in caves. And what did they do? They painted things in the caves. And so now we see, well, wait a second. First of all, scientifically, it's already been discovered they are not non-humans. They have the same DNA as humans. So that Neanderthal are just humans. And we can now surmise together, well, it sounds like maybe these are the family, it was a family group, and they were separated at the Tower of Babel, and they were living in caves and hunting, which is exactly what the Neanderthals did. So we have an explanation for a worldly incorrect belief. So very good. Okay, so Pedro, can you read question 2 in English?
Could they write in the new language right away?
All right, what do you think?
I think not. Maybe not.
Agreed. So what do you need? What do you need for a new language? Of course, you need to be able to speak a new language to each other, but what else do you need?
An alphabet.
Yes. And an alphabet, not just a verbal one, but a written one.
Written.
Okay,
Yes.
so you take the sounds and you have to then translate the sounds into an alphabet and letters and certain order of letters.
And until today, we have tribes that have no written form. It means their language is not in written form, and we have missionaries that study their languages and they create an alphabet. I personally know a missionary that does this.
Amazing.
Cast.
That's
Yes.
beautiful. That's beautiful. And this is important to remember that Christian missionaries uh, were fundamental, were essential in the 19th century and also in the early 20th century in forming, in creating all like innumerable written languages. So it was through the hard work of Christian missionaries that we have now this, that many peoples, I mean, like, I don't know, more than 1,000 different uh, ethnic groups were gifted a written language by Christian missionaries. Uh, and and I'll point out one thing that when most of the time, and for most of these peoples, when and what was the purpose? The purpose, of course, was not just to give them a language, but was then to have a written language so they could translate the Bible. That was the purpose. The purpose was to get the word of God into a language that those people could understand. And so, what was the Bible they translated from? The King James Bible. Okay, so they didn't go back. All these missionaries were not Greek, Aramaic, or Hebraic scholars. They understood English, and then they learned a new language or new tribal language, and they used that to then make a beautiful Bible in the local language. So it's a very important part of history that society doesn't want us to know that Christian missionaries civilized the world. Okay,
Yes.
much of the world. Okay, so let's go. Lucas, can you read question 3, please?
Mankind repented at or after the Tower of Babel.
Okay, very good. What do you think? Is there somewhere in the Bible that talks about their repenting?
No, there's not.
No. Now, this is an important thing. Do you think they were sorry?
I think not.
Well, but this is why I asked. Because being sorry is different than repenting. For instance, you can be sorry because I'm sorry I got caught.
Mm,
It's like,
yeah.
I wish this didn't happen. All right. So it's like, oh, my life is awful now. Right. So you can be sorry for the circumstances, but you're not repenting for the cause. Okay. So the consequences, you're sorry that the consequences have come on you, but you're not sorry for what caused the consequences. And so repenting goes back to the consequences, the origin of what happened. So, all right. So I agree with you, Pedro and Tyler. So they did not repent at all. There's no indication in the Bible that they went down on their knees and asked God for forgiveness. I don't I don't see that anywhere, right? So, and then Dina, can you please read question 4 in English?
What does this imply about the foundation of all cultures?
Okay. So what am I getting at? We now know that none of them repented, or we can surmise none of them repented. And then they were spread all over the world. So what does this imply about the foundation of all cultures?
I think all cultures have evil involved in them.
Exactly. So isn't that important? So the foundation of every culture was not in godly things. It was not in the good. It was, and to be specific, what they had done in Babel was a rebellion. They rebelled against God.
Yes.
And while they were sorry they got caught, it doesn't sound like they
Mhm.
repented of that. So they carried the seeds of the Babylonian rebellion to every part of the world with them. Um, and that's important because let's look at the next verse. So that was ended. So Pedro, can you read the mystery verse? And we're going to ask Lucas what book this is.
And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth.
Excellent. Very well read. Okay, so
Thank
Lucas, do you know? Yes, I'm sorry. Do you know what book that's from, please?
Revelations.
Absolutely right. Okay, so that was Revelation 17:5. So let me try that in Portuguese. E na sua testa estava escrito o nome, mistério, a grande Babilônia, a mãe das prostituições e abominações da terra. So let's just remember for a moment, Genesis is the first book of the Bible, Revelation is the last book of the Bible. And Babylon, what's the root of Babylon? What's the place where Babylon started?
In the Mesopotamia.
Okay, but it's actually part of the word, Babylon.
Okay.
All right, so you what to say, Pedro?
Oh, nothing.
Okay, and Indina, do you understand my question? So where was Babylon founded? When did it start?
In the Tower of Babel.
Exactly right. Okay, so Babel
Okay.
and then Babylon. Babylon was founded on Babel. Okay, the name changed slightly, but it was still there. It's the exact place. Okay, so
Is Iraq? It's
Iraq.
Iraq today.
It's Iraq. Exactly. It's in Iraq. And so that where we believe the Tower of Babel is where Babylon is, and that's not too far from the capital of Iraq. Okay, so there we are. So we understand then that because of the Tower of Babel and the seed of the Babylonian rebellion spread for throughout all the world in the end times during the tribulation, we have something called, it's a religious system, and it's called
Yeah.
Mystery Babylon the Great. Okay, so that very first rebellion has gone all the way through civilization, and at the end of history on Earth as we know it, prior to the millennium, that rebellion comes into full flower in the book of Revelation. Okay, Lucas, can you kindly read Genesis 11:10, please?
These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old, then begat Arphaxad 2 years after the flood.
Okay, so remember, we have some genealogy coming up, and so we hop and skip a number of verses, but we pick up on some interesting things to emphasize some points. And so let me try that in Portuguese. Estas são as gerações do Sem. Sem era da idade de 100 anos e gerou a Arfaxade, 2 anos depois do dilúvio. And we'll go directly to Anandina. Can you read question 5, please?
What do the words generations of Shem imply?
Okay, so do we remember this from the earlier chapters in Genesis when the
The
Bible?
tablet,
Exactly.
the tablets of one generation that's finished.
Yes. Okay. And specifically, the whose tablets have just finished?
Shem's.
Exactly right. Okay, so when it says the generations of Shem, it's at the end of Shem's tablets, which he's passing on to someone new. Okay, so Pedro, can you kindly read Genesis 11:13 in English?
Yeah. And Arpachshad lived after he begat Salah 403 years, and begat sons and daughters.
Very well read. E viveu Arfaxade depois que gerou a Selá 403 anos e gerou filhos e filhas. Okay, so let's go directly. Lucas, can you please read question 6 in English?
What is happening to the average lifespan and why?
Very well read. Okay, what do you think?
The, the average life span, it had changes. It has been little.
Okay, or decreased is a good verb to use. Increase and decrease.
Mm,
Okay, I agree entirely. And you know that how? From this verse?
It's because of the change in the earth, in the
Okay.
atmosphere.
Oh, good. And you're giving the why. Okay, thank you. But my question was, why do you say that the average lifespan decreased from the verse?
Mm,
Probably because of the when Arafashad begat Salah.
okay.
So his lifespan, because he gave birth to Salah at 100 years. So he only, poor man, he only lived 503 years, which is still pretty long for us today.
Of
But
course.
for the original generations, that already was a drastic reduction. And so, Pedro, you already were saying why. So you said the atmosphere had changed. And how had it changed?
After the flood, the water that had over the heaven, it had disappeared.
Exactly right. And one way, a good word for that is vapor. Okay, so like the vapor layer was gone. Very good. What else?
And the temperatures had changed also.
Okay. And which way? They got warmer, it got colder?
Mm, I don't know.
Okay.
I think I think the temperatures before the flood were more constant.
Exactly right. And they were constant. And did it ever freeze before the flood?
Oh, the ice age came before the after the flood.
Exactly right. So then you're answering my question by saying, no, it did not freeze before the flood. So remember, before the flood, it was a ideal conditions. It was like a greenhouse. And inside a greenhouse, it's always nice, warm, and humid. Perfect condition for plant life to grow. And so, yes, we know that there were ice ages, but are we in an ice age right now? No.
No.
Are there winters and ice and snow?
Yes.
Yes, over much of the northern and southern hemisphere in the extremes. So yes, the Earth got a lot colder. All right, because so now we have freezing, and it's not just during the winter season, or it's not just during ice ages. It's a much tougher environment. Anything else you remember? What happened with all that when all that water flooded all over the Earth and then ran off of the Earth back into the seas? What became the seas? What happened to the Earth?
It became I don't remember the word, but it was good for the plants.
Yeah, okay, and why? Maybe Pedro remember. What happened when the water was like running off the earth, running through the greenhouse, taking everything with it? Sorry?
Maybe all the nutrients of the earth
Exactly.
were were taken.
Okay, luckily not all, but
Yeah.
a lot of good soil. So
Yeah.
good soil. And you think of it, when you have a lot of water running over, it takes away the top part of the better soil and usually leaves the harder, more rock-like, harder soil underneath, right? So the soil, the good fertile soil, much of it was taken away. The environment is much more difficult. for both plant life
for today.
and human life. And not only that, there's one other consequence of the original sin that's happening in man. And what is that?
Mm, I don't know why.
It's hard. He earns his living with hard work. It's not
Agreed.
easy for
Okay,
him
exactly
to
right.
have his livelihood.
Okay, remember, so now sweat of the brow, that was part
Yeah.
of Adam's punishment. But what am I getting at? Actually, the this is something that the evolutionists say is critical to their nature directed, not God directed, nature as an agency directed process of evolution and adaptation is mutations.
Yeah.
Okay, so when before the original sin, there were no mutations. We were supposed to live forever. There was no decline, there was no decay, there was no entropy. And original sin brought in entropy on all life. And the scientific means of a lot of entropy between generations are mutations. Okay, and a mutation is that some cell goes a little bit wrong. And that mutation is passed on to the next generation. And if the mother and the father come together and certain cells that are mutated or mutating express themselves in the child. One simple thing, Anandina and I use glasses. Those are because of mutations. Most of
Yes.
humanity now uses glasses. Did Adam and Eve or even Noah or even Abram use glasses?
Was not necessary.
Okay, so eyesight are failing. All right, what God made perfect is getting worse and worse and worse every generation. Okay, so let's move on. And so 7, so that was Lucas. So Enandina, can you kindly read question 7, please?
What is the providentially given average lifespan of man?
Okay, so what do you?
70 years?
Yes, absolutely right. And is that it only 70 or is there some span there?
60 to 7?
Oh, uh-oh. Yeah,
No?
the other direction.
Oh, 70 to 80.
Absolutely right. Okay, and how do we know that? We know that from the next verse. Okay, so this is perfect. So Lucas is going to read this verse. No, I'm sorry. Pedro is going to read the verse, but Lucas is going to tell us what book it's from. So, Pedro, can you please read Mystery Book 9010?
The days of our years are 60 years and 10. And if by reason of strength they be fourscore years, yet is their strength labor and sorrow, for it is soon cut off, and we fly away.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Lucas, what book of the Bible is that? Absolutely right. All right, so Lucas is our Bible answer man, and he answers all these important questions, particularly about which books are represented by these verses. That was beautiful. Okay, let me try that in Portuguese. So, os dias da nossa vida chegam a 70 anos, e se alguns, pela sua robustez, chegam a 80 anos, orgulho deles é canseira e enfado, pois cedo se corta e vamos voando. Now, do you think the average lifespan has changed much since the days of Abram or David? That was probably written in Let me see. Does anyone remember Psalm 90? Who wrote that? Wait a second. I have it here.
Was
Oh, early. Moses. Okay, so from the time of Moses, has the average lifespan changed much?
No,
No, in the United States, it's declining.
declining.
It's declining by major amounts. More and more
Mm,
people are dying earlier here for many reasons, not just violence, but COVID is one, and some of the consequences of COVID. I won't get more specific, or we might be censored. Uh,
I know what you mean.
okay, and so uh, now, if entropy and the original sin made things get worse and worse, why isn't the lifespan now 50 years or less?
mm, I don't know.
It's a good question, right? Good question.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, let's think together. Technology. Okay, so modern medicine, modern technology. I would say what was particularly important was sanitation, right? So doctors and surgeons cleaning their hands, that alone, all right? So the average lifespan kept on getting. So in other words, the race is declining through entropy, the human race, and through a lot of hard work with technology and medicine, we're able to bring it back up a little. But just to give you an idea, during colonial days in Brazil, if I'm not mistaken, and the same was the same in the United States, average lifespan was only 40 years or less. Okay,
Yes.
average lifespan, because what happened? Many babies were born and died young.
Hmm.
Okay, so that meant that the average then kept on, was getting worse and worse and worse. So one big thing that increased was helping babies live. Anyway, so amazing that Moses made a prophecy. And that prophecy is that your average lifespan would be 70 to 80 years, and he's absolutely right. That's what it is today in the US, in Brazil, and I think in most of the world,
In
between
most of the
70 and
world.
80. Okay, so yet again, an incredible prophecy that only God could have made. Okay, this is just one of 1,000 examples of prophecies that are like, there's no way that author in his human capacity could have known that. Okay, I have to move on. I love prophecy. So, Lucas, our Bible verse man, can you kindly read Genesis 11:26 to 29?
And Terah lived 17 years, and begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran begat Lot.
Excellent, very well pronounced. And let me try that in Português. E viveu Terá 70 anos, e gerou a Abrão, a Naor e a Arã. E estas são as gerações de Terá. Terá gerou a Abrão, a Naor e a Arã. E Arã gerou a Ló. Okay, so Lucas was last. So Anadina, can you kindly read question 8 in English?
What do the words generations of Terah imply?
Easy question.
Yes, that's his tablet. It's finished. These are uh, uh, generation is finished.
Okay,
Is that?
exactly. So the termination of Terah's tablet.
Uh-huh.
So those tablets are coming hard and fast now. All right, so now let's continue with the study of God's covenant with Abram. And so, Pedro, can you kindly read Genesis 11:31 in English?
And Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran his son's son, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan, and they came unto Haran, and dwelt there.
Beautifully pronounced, thank you. E tomou Terá a Abram, seu filho, e a Ló, filho de Arã, filho de seu filho, e a Sarai, sua nora, mulher do seu filho Abrão, e saiu como eles de Ur de Caldeus, para ir à terra de Canaã, e vieram até Arã, e habitaram ali. Wow, all the interrelations there, it sounds like a Brazilian soap opera. Okay, so that was Pedro. So Lucas, can you read question A in English?
Ur of the Chaldees was an enslaved place.
Very good. So remember you can separate things. So it's uncivilized. And so this is a kind of a surprise question. So here we are. It's many years after the Tower of Babel, many years after the dispersion. But interestingly, the Ur of Chaldees is not that far from Babylon. Okay, so Abram's family did not move very far. So maybe they were a powerful family, and they got to choose the fertile valley of the Euphrates, and they got there first. But so what do you think? It's a guess because the Bible doesn't tell us. Was Ur of Chaldees, were they hunting and gathering and living in caves?
I think it was civilized.
Yes, absolutely right. Okay. And this is information wouldn't necessarily know. The Ur of Chaldees had a population of 250,000 people. This is a big city. Okay, so Abraham left a big city, 2 times the size of São João, closer to the size, it's bigger than Viçosa. And guess what? They could read as well. Okay, and this is important because again, our secular evolutionists try to say that no, in the time of Abram, that couldn't have been written at the time of Abram because people were very primitive. They didn't know how to read and write. Wrong. Archaeology, as in so many times, has come to the rescue of those false prophets, scientists, lost secular people, and proves the Bible is correct. And so, for instance, right here this is just one of the clay tablets from the Ur of Chaldees, and there were thousands of such tablets. Okay, so these tablets had their own language written on it. All right, so it looks almost like Egyptian hieroglyphics, but it's its own language. And so they were reading and writing, they were putting it on tablets. And as we all know, as we just said, when it says generations of Terah and generations of Shem, we're talking about written tablets. So of course they all knew how to read and write, and they never lost it. They didn't lose that because of the dispersion after the Tower of Babel. Okay, so Interesting. So why do I say all this? Well, let's look at the logistics. So, Anandina, can you read question B in English?
Could a large population have grown quickly since the dispersion? I think so.
Yeah. And again, you can't,
Yeah,
yeah, you can't know
could.
this for, easily, but you look at the genealogies. It's been 267 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if families are having many children, growth can be exponential. Okay, so this is not difficult at all that the Ur of Chaldees already had 250,000 people, and it was a fully functioning city. So let's see. So Pedro, can you read question C in English?
Was the goal to go to Palestine?
Okay, what do you think? Trick question. It's a trick question. You remember what a trick question is? Like in Halloween, trick or
Yeah.
treat?
I suppose they were searching for a better, for more fertile land, maybe.
All right, but what was the goal to go to Palestine? Let's go back to the verse 11:31. Does it say that went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Palestine?
Oh, now I understand. There's no Palestine here.
Exactly. Oh, amazing. Okay.
But mentioned.
All right. Okay. I think the name is different. It's actually Canaan.
Yeah, I found I find the question just a little bit strange, but
That's
well,
why that's why I said it's a trick question, okay? Because only if you are a leftist, unhistorical person would you say, or maybe Arab, that no, 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 they were going to Palestine. The Bible doesn't say that. Okay, so Lucas, can you kindly read Genesis 12:1? So there we are. We're moving on to a new chapter.
The Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of this country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, into a land that I will show thee.
Wow. Okay, thank you. Very well pronounced, Lucas. Let me try that in Portuguese. Ora, o Senhor disse a Abrão: Sai-te da sua terra, da sua parentela, da tua parentela e da casa do teu pai para a terra que eu te mostrarei. Wow, that's tough. Now, I think this would be very hard for the average Brazilian, right?
yes,
Leave your
you love to
family,
be
abandon your family,
together.
leave the country, away from the people you know, into a land that you've never seen before. Wow. So I think Abram was an obedient man, and maybe that's why God chose him. Okay, so let's go. Pedro, can you kindly read question? No, that was Lucas. So then, we switched order. Anandina, can you kindly read question D?
He said so. God's covenants were with all people. Now God calls for Abram and his descendants to get out of thy country. Why?
Okay, very good. And I'm giving you a new word there, maybe hitherto.
Hitherto.
Yeah,
Okay.
is a synonymous with
Hitherto.
beforehand. Beforehand.
Hitherto.
Beforehand is a more common one, but hitherto is nice and poetic.
Hitherto. Hitherto.
Okay.
Hitherto.
So in a sense, it's like up until now, hitherto, hitherto
Hitherto.
now, hitherto. So before now, God's covenants were with all people, but now he's making a covenant. We'll get into that covenant for Abram and his family. So there's two parts of this. He's telling him to get out of thy country, and he's not calling a lot of people. He's just calling Abram and his descendants. So why is that? Let's think together.
Maybe because in Ur of the Chaldees, there was lots of sins. It um, was not people that follow the covenants of God.
Absolutely right. Maybe it was like Sodom and Gomorrah. So absolutely right. The Earl of Chaldees was probably not a nice place. So now, so was God doing this just because he liked Abram and he wanted to take him from a not nice place and take him to a nicer place? Was that his motive?
I think it
Well,
was.
go on. Go on, Pedro.
I think it was because Abram was a man that tries to be good, to follow the covenants of God.
Absolutely. And his laws. Exactly. Okay. But well, all right. So he, again, but that sounds like Abram was a good guy. And so God liked him. And so I'm going to pull you out of that bad place because I like you. Or is there more of a reason?
In fact, it was the beginning of something bigger, and God started with Abram.
Okay.
But the goal was to reach all the families of the earth, just
Oh,
like us. We have been reached. Okay,
okay.
thousands of years after this, here
Okay.
we are because of Abram.
Okay. Agreed. And so Abraham eventually he started what people? The father of what people? Most
The
important,
Jewish,
the
the
Jews.
Hebrew
Okay.
people, the Jewish people,
Yeah. And what are the Jews called? What do they like to call themselves? The chosen people. Okay. So God needed, he chose a people. And what did he just do? What did he just do with Abraham? Did he like say, Abraham, you're a special guy. I want you to stay in Ur of Chaldees, and I'm going to treat you and your descendants specially? Or did he pull Abram out of that? And what's another word for pulling something away?
separating.
Absolutely right. Does that remind you of anyone we know today? Who is anyone today known as separated?
I don't remember.
We, the church,
Exactly right.
Okay.
Okay, so the church is separated from the world, and
from
here
the
is the
world.
original type. Okay, God separated Abram and the chosen people as a type, a foreshadowing of what he would do with his church. Okay, another way to think of this also is he needed a separate people to fulfill the first major messianic prophecy in the Bible, which is, you'll remember, Genesis 3:15, about the seed of the woman. So the seed of the woman, as we all know from our discussion back on Genesis 3, is none other than Jesus Christ. And so God, in order to bring God the Son, so God the Father, in order to bring God the Son, needed a separate people to bring forth and fulfill this prophecy. And if you take my history of the Bible class, there's another reason why God needed a separate people. They needed to bring forth Jesus Christ, the Messiah, and they needed to do something else very important.
The Bible.
The Jews wrote the entire Bible. Okay.
Yeah.
The only book that perhaps is not written by a Jew is Luke, or both of Luke. Okay, so Luke was perhaps a
And
Gentile.
uh,
Okay, so very important. God needed a separate people for two major purposes: to bring forth the seed, Jesus Christ, and to bring forth the word. Okay, which is synonymous. Actually, the word, as John repeatedly tells us and beautifully tells us, the word is Jesus Christ. They're the same thing. They're synonymous. Wow. Okay, this is a deep book we're studying. It's a very deep book. So, Pedro, can you kindly read question E?
Why might a separate people have been needed?
Okay, so we just said, well, we just gave the reasons with the supposed fruit, the consequences of having a separate people, Jesus Christ, the Bible. But why the idea? Why did they need to be separated? I mean, why couldn't they just do this inside of Ur of Chaldees? God was protecting him, no problem.
Okay.
maybe, well, due to the influence of the
Absolutely
people.
right. Absolutely right. So it's just it's like materialism, decadence. As we know, when the Israelites eventually came to the promised land, they
Oh, yes.
disobeyed God. They did not drive away or kill all of the natives when God told them to, and they started mixing and living next to ungodly people, and they started having mixing in terms of children, and it was a disaster. Okay, so God needed to separate his chosen people because, as we know later in the Bible, when they were no longer separated, they always fell back into sin. Okay, so let's finish up with the last page. So, Lucas, can you read Genesis 12, 2 to 3, please?
And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And I thee shall all families of the earth be blessed.
Very good. In the end, there's an and in.
Indeed.
Yes, shall also. Very good. Very well pronounced. And by the way, this is Anandina was just saying, yeah, that it was to eventually bless all nations and here and all people. And here it's the next verse. So absolutely right. So let me read that in Portuguese. E far-te-ei uma grande nação, e abençoar-te-ei, e engrandecerei o teu nome, e tu serás uma benção. E abençoarei os que te abençoarem, e amaldiçoarei os que te amaldiçoarem. E em ti serão benditas todas as famílias da terra. Wow, what a grand verse that is. That's amazing. Okay, so we got to finish up now, and they're pretty straightforward questions. So, Anandina, question F, please, in English.
Were the blessings to be limited to the separate people? No,
Absolutely not.
but to all the families of the earth.
There we are. Okay, in thee. Wow.
Indeed.
So through Abram's descendants, essentially. Okay, and so last question, uh, Pedro, can you kindly read question G in English?
So, from whom and when did the Gentiles become part of this blessing?
Okay, Good question, right?
Right.
Important. Oh, and what did you just say? What? Through whom?
It, through Jesus.
Absolutely right. Okay. So through Jesus, and they had to wait a while, right? From Abram to all those poor Gentiles. All right. Some of them came to the faith via the Jewish religion, but generally they were excluded. And then Jesus brought us all in. Praise the Lord. So anyway, that's the last verse or the last question for today's study. Fantastic. Are there any questions or comments in English?
I think not.
Okay. Thank you all for watching.